Mathematical metaphysics is necessary in order to have a coherent study of knowledge with respect to our scientific corpus, which means that there's no way to understand how we can have such accurate predictions from the scientific method without a way of connecting language to universe, because a theory is really a theoretical language that takes its universe of discourse as an argument. So if you don't understand the codomain of that mapping, if you don't understand what reality is, there's no way to justify why our theories are so effective, or how the formal syntax of our theorization can actually make any meaningful reference to the contents of reality. So the study of this is called epistemology, which is all about theories and how they connect to their universe. It's literally the study of knowledge, and how we can form a true or absolute knowledge about anything. So the Eugene Paul Wigner famously said that the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics and science is a gift that we neither understand nor deserve. Is that somehow mathematics as a formal abstract syntax, how does that actually connect to like physics, for example, where we can calculate the velocity of an object using mathematics, and that actually corresponds to how things play out in reality? Surely this requires a deeper explanation. So the CTMU explains the foundation of scientific reasoning and observation itself. Science aims to express the identity of reality, which is a formal structure unique to the CTMU with respect to theorization. So the science attaches its theories to its observations using what Langen has called the equivalent of epistemological magic glue. Is it just like sticks them together? It doesn't actually justify how that glue works, what it is made of, and how we can justify its application, but rather it just says the theory corresponds to our observations, and if there is some sort of gap between them, we're going to either update the theory or we're going to throw out the observations and say, obviously, we need to retry that. But never in there is there anything that is actually logically justified. It's just sort of empirically messed with until it works and can make valid predictions about reality. Obviously, this might be enough for some standard applications of science, but it's not enough for actually a general philosophy of scientific knowledge. It just hand waves and says that a theory shares structure with its formal universe, which it makes reference to. But the CTMU actually justifies the connection between human cognitive perceptual syntax and our theorization and reality itself, and therefore explains why the theorist can make contact with a genuine scientific observation that proves their theory. So theory is to universe just as mind is to reality, is that our mind has a structure that it can participate in theorization. And because our human cognitive perceptual syntax is actually identified to some extent with the way that reality self-configures, we can form a valid and true knowledge about scientific things in reality. In science, it means like sci is the root in Latin to know. So how can we form knowledge about reality? We have to do it using science. And to justify how science works, we need a more general logical structure that says that human cognitive perceptual syntax is connected to the universe. And that's exactly what the CTMU does. And by formulating mathematics and logic as part of the grammar of the intrinsic language of reality, and also as part of our own mind's grammar, the language that actually goes on within our heads, is that the CTMU shows that the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in grounding science and mathematics is useful in a self-dual metaphysical framework where the abstract mathematics can connect to the concrete science, and our abstract theories and math in our head, our logico-mathematical syntax, which is one of the substructures that occurs in our human thought, can actually connect to something out there. And that's because the relationship between our mind and reality is that actually works at both ends. So our mind actually encodes truthful facts from external reality, and then we can externalize our own perception. We can externalize our own theorization, and that it will actually share common structure with the universe. So science relies on that which is observed as having an identity, which can only be justified in the CTMU. An identity is a syndiphionic relationship. It's a self-operation that ascribes a property to something that is unchanged even when it's transformed. And what the CTMU says is that reality has an identity which has a common identity with our own mind. So that means that our mind can knowledge can be transplanted between our mind and reality without anything going awry, without anything breaking in the process or getting miscommunicated if we have these proper venues of knowledge, such as the scientific method, such as logical reasoning. All of these things work to form a truthful and clear perception about reality. So, where every relationship is an operation that leaves an object unchanged on both sides, a true theory of epistemology has to leave knowledge unchanged on both sides. So, when you're relating to objects, when you're relating your knowledge to the external universe, you're also relating their identities and identifying them as having a common structure through your operation. Science in general fails to actually explain its own theoretical structure because it excludes the theorist. It excludes that in whose mind that knowledge is being made manifest. Whereas mathematical metaphysics says that the theorist and the theory are self-dual to one another. In the CTMU, the theorist is contained within the theory in a certain sense as its identifier. So the theory never loses theoretical structure by separating itself from the person or the theorist who came up with it. So therefore, it intrinsically links not only human cognitive perceptual and syntax in general, but the particular syntax of the observer or experimenter or theorist with scientific theorization. It's like when you're doing mathematics, you're bringing the mathematician into the equation, because who was it that actually related those two things? Yes, you say, x equals y, but those two things weren't actually identified as being equal until they were connected by some mind and said that, oh, these two attributes actually have the same value. So in science, the mathematician, Langen says that the mathematician in any required display, storage, and processing media are typically missing from its formal idealization, and is usually considered to exist in a Platonic realm beyond which no explanation is required. Langen says in a TOE, this is unacceptable. To have a theory of everything, you have to actually have everything within it. You have to have the person who came up with it. You have to have all the people who are receiving the message about it. You have to have the display, storage, processing, media. Everything is part of the formal syntax of that scientific language. And if you omit any of that, if you omit and just think about as like this is just an abstract truth that exists independently of any observation, you're missing the whole point of science, which is about bringing knowledge from the outside world into our own minds. And so thereby, you're actually missing an important key. You're basically removing the scientist from scientist, and therefore there's an unescapable dualism between the scientific knowledge that is claimed and the science itself, and the scientist who is able to interpret that knowledge to actually change reality and change his own mind towards the end of having a greater and more absolute understanding of the truth. So in a theory of everything, where you're trying to explain literally every single thing about reality, including how the process of theorization work, obviously omitting the theorist from a theory of theories is basically no theory at all, because without a theorist, there can be no theories. So there are two kinds of theories of everything. There is a unified field theory, which is a general structure of physics that is supposed to connect quantum mechanics with Einstein's general relativity. And these two things, which respectively correspond to the local and global structure of reality, are usually held to be separate from one another. What a unified field theory would do is it would situate these two things, just like in symbiosis. It would take these two theories as common elements and show that there's a more general structure or theory that actually connects both of their formalisms, and therefore we could have a general theory of everything. But that is only a physical theory of everything. That wouldn't actually necessarily fit the criteria of being a metaphysical theory of everything, which actually means a theory about everything, not just physics, not just about quantum mechanics, but about everything. And if we really want to explain reality and have a self-consistent logical framework in which every single detail about reality, even those that will be discovered thousands of years in the future, can exist as a sub-language, you have to have the most general possible structure. And the most general possible structure is that of how a theory itself works. Because once you have that structure, then you can just color in any single theory that you have, and if it fits within the lines. If you're coloring outside of the lines, that's not a real theory. But if you actually have a self-consistent structure of truth that includes the process and structure of theorization, then anything that you color in, any theory that you have, you can test it against that absolute theory of theories, and then that will actually be possible to justify logically whether that theory is true or untrue. With the physics, we're just kind of trying to see what works. With the CTMU, we can actually know what is true. So that is the basic distinction between mathematical metaphysics and science, is that mathematical metaphysics is self-referential and self-justifying, whereas science requires outside structure that is not talked about within its domain of discourse in order to explain its findings. So thank you. God bless. Take care.